What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all? This is Paul, your hip hop relationship and recovery coach, and I'm bringing to you another Kick Your Butt Out episode. And I'm thanking God because without him, none of this is possible. Now, as usual, everybody, before I get off into anything that we're going to be talking about today, I have to say what I always say, and I strongly encourage you to get this into your thought process, right? So that you can incorporate this into your lives. And that is, if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. And that, my friends, is a solemn promise. All right. Thank you for that. Today's episode, I had the honor and the privilege of being able to sit back and think about today's title. It came to me and I thought about it in its context. And I said, wow, that, the information and the context or the content that God has spoken into my spirit, it was like, wow, this is exactly what we're doing. And, even in my prayers before I came into starting this particular taping or recording of this episode, I asked God, speak to us, speak to all of us, because we need to hear what it is that God is saying so that we could act on it, right? In obedience, in reverence, in honor, and all of the things above, because God deserves all the glory. Number one, first and foremost, because at the end of the day, whoever out there is listening to this podcast, you have the ears to hear or the resources to be able to tune into this particular podcast episode or whatever the case may be because of God. So he deserves all the glory and all of the honor. All right. So let's get off into the content of today. So as I was thinking about, when this particular title came to my mind, it made me think about Brother Rick. Brother Rick, if you're listening to this podcast, thank you so much for being who you are. I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. You've always been a spiritual inspiration to me. Even when we were messy, I still knew that there was an anointing on you, and God had a special calling on your life, and you have a special gift. I want to give honor to my brother because, again, some of the things that he said inspired this title. And one of the things that I used to hear him, because he's a singer, he has the gift of singing. He can sing. The brother can sing. Anyway, so one of the songs that he used to sing or sang, again, God didn't give me the gift of singing. However, I know lyrics. And he used to say, when God gets ready, you got to move. It was a song, and you can tell it was an old song from the South, because it definitely had a country accent or twist to it. Sounded beautiful. But that was the name of it. That was the lyrics that he used to sing. When the Lord gets ready, you got to move. And I thought about him when this particular title came to my mind. And so I decided to title today's episode of Kick Your Butt Out, I Need to Move, but let me say that again. I need to move, but excuse me. So when we think about, when I thought about moving, when I thought about this title, when I thought about this content, I thought about how there's a lot of things that we are asking of God, right? There's a lot of things that we are praying for. There's a lot of things that we're believing God for. There's a lot of things that we have expectation, because we always talk about, when you go to God with expectation. When you come to church with expectation. We have all of these expectations and all of these things on God, but we won't move when he tell us to move. Or if we do move, we are moving in a direction that he didn't even tell us to go in. And that, how do I know that? I'm guilty of it myself. And I know many people who fit this same, who fit in this same category. Am I judging? By no means. I want to uplift us. I want to help us, right, to get unstuck and be able to get to a place where we can be who God says we are and receive what God has for us by moving. I remember a couple of years ago at our church. So we have First Wednesday services at our church. And a couple of years ago, we had a particular guy, pastor, that he came out of Baltimore. I can never remember his name. Excuse me. He's one of my friends on Instagram. And again, I still can't remember his name, but he had a powerful message that he had talked about on the time that he came to our church and taught. And one of the things that he said, he said two things. He said, God isn't upset with us for wanting more. He's upset with us for settling for less. And we're settling for less because we're not moving or by not moving. The other thing that he said was, God can't give us all or what he has for us, because many of us, the state that we are in, if God gave it to us, it would harm us more than it would help us, even in some cases probably kill us. And so being the just and loving God that he is, because many times we're not moving, he can't give. Because we're not moving, he can't bless. Because we're not moving, he can't bestow his favor. Now, thank God for grace and mercy, because if it wasn't for grace and mercy, we all be messed up. Because again, a lot of us are not moving. Or if we are moving, we are moving in the direction and in the areas and in the places that God did not tell us to go. So the first thing that I want to say to that is, again, as I was thinking about the content, it was a scripture that came to me that spoke to this. And it was the part, I think it was in the book of Deuteronomy. As a matter of fact, it is. He said, I will make you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, the lender and not the borrower. Here's the problem. What God said, he is his word. So he's going to stand on what he says. Now, he said, I'll make you the head and not the tail. And because of us not moving, or because of us moving in the direction that God didn't tell us to go, we still the tail. And let me say this, people, because, in the recovery community or in the recovery world, they have a term that they call dressed up garbage. You dressed up looking good, but on the inside or in other areas that's really not seen to the naked eye, you're garbage. What am I saying? Listen, people. If you talking like you the tail, if you walking like you the tail, if you're acting like you the tail, if you're thinking like you the tail, If you smell like you're the tail, you're the tail. Is that a bad thing? Yes, if you stay there, especially when you know I'm guilty, especially when you know that God has called you for something else that you are not doing, that you're not moving in. It's almost like when Jesus had asked the three disciples that went to sleep when he asked them to pray, can you just stay up and pray for me? And pray with me for at least 1 hour. This is what he said. And that's the same thing with us. Couldn't you just do this so that you could be the head? Couldn't you just do that? Or could you, watch this, could you just not do that so that you can be who I said you are? He said, I will make you the head and not the tail. And we won't move. And we convince ourselves. Here's the crazy part about it. Here's the crazy part of it. How do I know? I've been guilty. We convince ourselves that we okay. And let me say this to you, to all of us. If you have to convince yourself that you okay, you're not okay. All right. Anyway, so I will make you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath. Many of us, because we're not moving, or because we're moving in the direction that God didn't tell us to move, we beneath. We are living beneath who he says that we are. And here's another thing that bothers me. We blame everybody and everything in every place but the person that we're supposed to be blaming. Because let me tell you this. Let me say this to everybody who's listening to this podcast. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, you better be the tail or you better be beneath or I'm going to kill you. Never happened. Never happened. And so what am I saying? We're the tail and we're beneath willingly. Jesus talked about it when he says that, all have gone like sheep to the slaughter. And that's what we're doing when we're not moving. When God tells us to move. That's what we are doing when God told us to move one way and we're going the other. Think about Jonah. When God told Jonah to go to one place, he went the other direction. And look what happened to him. And we're so under the grace and mercy of God, the grace and mercy type of God, the loving type of God, that we don't think that God corrects us in the way that he had to correct Jonah. I remember many times for myself, when I did stuff against what God told me to do, and it was in the form of a crime, the thing that I did that God told me not to do, and it was in the form of a crime. I committed a crime, and I went to jail. God, grace and mercy was all over me. God forgave me, but here's what he still said. He said, I forgive you. My grace and mercy is still there, but you going to jail. So we have to stop fooling ourselves into believing that not moving or moving in the area that God didn't tell us to move doesn't have its consequences, because it does. It has its consequences, and we still under grace and mercy. We still under favor. We still under his love. We still his children, but you still gonna pay the consequences for being the tail and being beneath. Especially, again, like I said, nobody is putting a gun to our head and making us live beneath who God says we are, or being the tail and we supposed to be the head. Nobody. And watch this. I'm speaking specifically, when I say the head and not the tail, I'm speaking specifically to us as men, because it bothers me. It bothers me. It bothers me. It bothers me when I hear these men, us men, complaining about these women being in the positions that they're in, and I always say, and they complaining about it, right? And I always, my reply to every last one of the men who say that stupid stuff is, if you were where you were supposed to be, you wouldn't have to worry about it. We always complaining and talking about what people who not supposed to be in this place and that place, they ain't supposed to be doing this and they ain't supposed to be doing that. But you ain't moving. You ain't moving. You ain't in your place. So stop complaining. Again, I'll make you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath. I need to move, but God told me to do this, but I heard you, God, but I know what you said, God, but let me say this. Again, Paul said, God came to save sinners, of which I am the chiefest. I'm the least of the saints and the chiefest of sinners. These are the couple of things that the apostle Paul, who wrote 13 books in the Bible, said. Why did I use that? Why did I say that? Because I want to make sure that you all understand I'm pointing the finger at me first. Even this podcast, when God first gave me the vision for this podcast, oh, the excuses that I came up with, all of the so-called justifiable reasons and excuses that I came up with so that I didn't have to move, I created them. I came up with them. I said them to God, and he moved that out the way. He moved that out the way. He gave me this. He did that. He took this. He did so many things for me to position me right to do this podcast, to kick your butt out. And I came up with an excuse every time not to do it. You know why? Because I was scared to move. I'm just keeping it 100. And I was, let me say it like this. I was scared to move in the direction that he told me to move. 100%. 100%. And I remember the last time we had a conversation about this. Because he had provided me with everything that I needed. Excuse me. Oh, and let me say this. God never gives you just enough. He always gives you a whole lot more. But if you can see the equipment that I have in my office, he always gives you more than what you need. So you know that it's him, and you can be able, and you don't have no excuses to not do what God has called you to do. So you out there who listening to this podcast, stop acting like he ain't give you enough to do what he called you to do, because God, he never gives you enough. He always gives you more. So you don't have any excuses or any complaints. Now let me get to what the conversation was, what he said to me. So again, I got everything. I'm sitting in my office and I'm looking at all this equipment that God gave me. It's all in my closet. I got it all in the overflow. You know, I got a lot of stuff on the computer. I have everything and some, right? So I'm sitting here in my office one day and I'm trying to find another excuse. I'm trying to find another excuse not to move. Here's what God said to me. And I like God. I like how God talks, because when God says something, you can use it as a question and a statement at the same time. It could be a question and he could be telling you something or asking you something at the exact same time. And he said to me, "Are you scared?" But I wasn't even talking to God, right? I'm creating these scenarios in my mind to make it okay to have another excuse or another but as to why I wasn't going to. I was going to go another week or another month without doing my podcast episodes. And he said, "You scared?" Now, it sounded like a statement and a question at the same time. I said, "Yeah." I was honest. God knows everything. You can't lie to God. He knows everything. Yep, God, I'm scared as all get out. I'm scared. Here was his reply. So for all you all out there who are listening to this podcast, right? And God says to move, and he has to have a conversation with you, I promise you, he's not going to tell you, okay, that's all right, you ain't got to move. That's not going to happen. He's not going to tell you that. So let me get that out the way right now, so you won't fool yourself into believing, saying, well, God said that's okay, I ain't got to do it. He gonna have somebody. No, you got to do it. And here's what he said to me. He said, do it anyway. He said, move anyway. I don't care if you're scared. Do it scared. Do it scared. I'm not scared anymore. And I'm grateful that he said that. Because it was something about the way that he said that it was like, okay, I'm not going to be released from this. I might as well go ahead and do what God told me to do and make the best of it. Because again, at the end of the day, I want you to understand that kick your butt out ain't about me. It's not for me to get the glory and look good. It's for God. This is for God to get the glory and look like the God that he is. Because these episodes of this particular podcast, even the title, is designed to help us move in the areas that move in our greatness, move in our extraordinary potential, move in the phenomenal people and persons and vessels that we are. That's what this thing is designed to get that butt out of the way, right? So that you can move into what God has called us to move into. That's what this is all about. So again, he's not going to tell you, okay, that's all right. And just like I told you, he said me, he might end up telling you the same thing. He might be telling you through me, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Move anyway. Now, he also said, now, I'm going to make you the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, the lender and not the borrower. Well, the Bible also says that the borrower is slave to the lender. We still slaves because we're not moving in many areas of our lives. And we slaves willingly. Because again, the scripture says, if the Son sets you free, you shall be free indeed. So if he set you free and you're a slave, it's because you went back into slavery. How do I know? Did it. Guilty. Yes, I've done it many, many, many times. And listen, this doesn't always mean from a monetary standpoint. You can be the lender from a standpoint of lending somebody some encouragement, right? Some motivation to build a healthy relationship with God first, build a healthy relationship with themselves, get healthy physically, get healthy mentally, get healthy emotionally, get healthy from a relation, all these other different standpoints. Feed somebody, whether it's the word of God, whether it's food, whatever the case may be. You can be the lender in many ways. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean from a monetary standpoint, and it does mean from a monetary standpoint. We can't get nobody nothing in many cases because we owe too much ourselves. We too much in debt ourselves. And we don't have nobody to blame but ourselves. Or we are not lending because we selfish. It's all about me. It's all about I, me, mine. Yep. And I am a child of God. That's what a lot of us live up under that and wonder why we can't be the lender. Wonder why God won't even position us to lend anybody anything because we selfish. In many ways, lots of us, and I'm again been guilty of it myself. As a Christian, as a healed man, walking in my calling and my gift, and I had to take a step back and say, man, well, hold on, it's something ain't right here. And I realized that I was being selfish. I was thinking about me. I was making stuff about me. That equates to not moving. That equates to possibly moving, but moving in the area and in a direction that God did not tell me to go. The same thing for anybody who's listening to this podcast. And so again, I'm not here to condemn anybody. I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm just here to call us on our stuff so that we can get up off of our butts, because right behind me, that says you either sitting on your butt or standing on your why. And when we're not moving, we sitting on our butt, pretty much 100%. When we're not moving, or when we move and what God didn't tell us to move, we sitting on our butt. And I'm not talking about the physical. I'm talking about one T, B-U-T, not T-T. All right. So here's my question. Why you not moving? And if you're moving, where you moving to? Whose voice are you following? Are you following yours? Are you following the world's? Or are you following God? I don't know why I got to say this, but I'm going to say it. There was a few scriptures, right, in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, for sure. I'm not sure if it's in John, but I know it's in the three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Jesus had mentioned to the disciples. He said it like this. He said, let us get in the boat and go over to the other side. That meant move. If Jesus has told you to move, that means he has equipped you with what you need to move, and he knows that you can get there, because he's not going to tell us to do anything that he knows that we can't do. And he's not going to ask us or require us to do anything, and he doesn't give the provision for it. That's just not the type of God that we serve. And we all know that. So whatever area that God has told you to move, please, people, let's start moving. Because it doesn't make sense that we live in a world, right? And the Bible says that we are the light of the world, the salt of the earth, and it doesn't look like it. A city that is set on a hill, and it doesn't look like it. A candle that sits on a light stand and gives a light to all that are in the house, and it doesn't look like it. It doesn't make sense. Again, I'm guilty as well. So I'm not, if I'm pointing the finger, I'm pointing the finger at the man in the mirror. And at the same time, I want to lift up my brother and my sister who's listening to this podcast. I want to lift up my fellow man, a fellow woman who's listening to this podcast. And like I said, these podcasts are designed to lift us up, not tear us down. Because again, like I said at the beginning, many of us we are ready to tell, so we don't need to be torn down anymore. We already acting like the tail. We smell like it, look like it, think like it, sleep like it, eat like it. So let's stop, y'all. Let's stop. Let's stop sitting on our butt. Start standing on our why. Stop making up all these excuses as to why you not moving. Stop moving in the direction, in the area, in the thought process, in the words, in the heart that God didn't tell you to move in. And yes, that is your wife or your husband. Yes. But don't tell God, I'm not moving because of my wife. I'm not moving because of my husband. Because what you're basically saying is that you're worshiping the created over the creator. Again, how do I know? Guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. And I know I'm not unique in that. Again, I'm just trying to help some people get unstuck and start moving. Because I said it in one of my previous episodes. The way this country looks right now and the direction that it's going because of the way that it looks and the things that's going on in this country, I'm not even talking about across the world. I'm talking about in our own front yard. If you, man of God, if you, woman of God, don't start moving, we don't get to complain or talk about what's going to end up happening. What am I saying? Us moving going to change some of the trajectory of what's going on in our country, in our households, in our churches, in our schools, in our recreational places, in our stores. We start moving, things are going to change. The head, not the tail. Above, not beneath. The lender, not the borrower. It's going to change. And I have enough faith and belief in God to know that it can and will happen when we start moving and getting in our place. Lastly, here's what he said. He said, I need a body. And so this thing is going to have to happen through us. Let's move, y'all. Let's move. Let's start making moves according to what God said. Let's stop making excuses as to why we can't move or won't move or don't move. And let's move in a direction where our light gonna shine, that men will see our good works and glorify our Father which is in heaven. Because this is about souls being saved. Now, that came from God. Lastly, I want to say what I always say. I love you all. There's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. If you're looking for a but, it's going to always be easy to find one. And please, everybody who's listening to this podcast, and I'm asking you to go share this with somebody. Share this with somebody. Be well. Do the next right thing. God bless you all. This is Paul, your hip hop relationship and recovery coach. Until next time, y'all do the move that God told y'all to do. I'll see y'all later. Deuces.